They opened your chat again last night. And with the Queen of Swords showing here, I need you to understand something very clearly. This was not casual. This was not them scrolling out of boredom. This was not some empty digital habit where your name appeared and meant nothing. No, the Queen of Swords is the card of someone trying to stay composed while their mind is cutting straight through the lie they have been telling themselves. And the lie is this: they have been acting like they are fine without speaking to you. They have been acting like the silence is controlled. They have been acting like their feelings are logical, manageable, contained. But last night, that mask slipped. They opened your chat because something inside them wanted the truth, even if their pride was not ready to say it out loud. They stared at the conversation like it was evidence. Evidence of what happened. Evidence of what they still feel. Evidence of the version of themselves that existed when your energy was close enough to touch. And the strange thing is, they may have told themselves they were only checking, only looking, only making sure. But their body knew differently. Their chest knew differently. Their nervous system knew differently. Because the second they saw your name, something sharpened inside them. The Queen of Swords does not represent messy emotion on the surface. She represents the person who looks cold because they are trying very hard not to fall apart. And that is exactly the energy around them. They are trying to think their way out of a feeling that refuses to be reasoned with. They may have reread one message, then another. They may have paused on something you said that once felt small but now carries weight. They may have remembered your tone, your timing, your warmth, your distance, and for a moment, they almost said something. They almost let the truth move from their chest to their fingers. But then the sword came down. Pride, fear, control, the same old defense. But listen carefully. The silence is no longer protecting them. It is exposing them. And the secret is beginning to crack. And now, with justice showing here, this is where the energy becomes even more uncomfortable for them. Because justice does not let someone hide behind a version of the story that only protects their ego. Justice brings the receipt. Justice brings the mirror. Justice brings that quiet moment where they have to sit with what they did, what they avoided, and what they still cannot fully explain away. They told themselves they were only opening the chat to look. They told themselves it did not mean anything. They told themselves they were still in control, but after they closed it, the feeling did not close with it. That is the part they were not prepared for. Because opening your chat was the action, but what happened afterward was the collapse. Not loud, not dramatic on the outside, but inside, something started weighing itself, like these scales here. One side holding the truth, the other side holding every excuse they have been using to stay silent, and for a while those excuses may have worked. They may have convinced themselves that distance was maturity, that silence was strength, that not reaching out meant they had power over the situation. But justice does not care how polished the excuse sounds. Justice asks one question: is it true? And that is where they started to feel it. Because the truth is, they were not peaceful when they opened that chat. They were not detached. They were not free. They were measuring the silence and realizing it had cost them more than they wanted to admit. They tried to put the phone down. They tried to move on with the night. They tried to return to whatever cold, composed version of themselves they have been performing. But your name stayed with them. Your words stayed with them. That unfinished feeling stayed with them. And it is not just emotional anymore. It is mental. It is physical. It is sitting in their chest like a verdict they do not want to hear. Because somewhere deep down, they know they did not just walk away from a conversation. They walked away from a moment where they could have been honest. And what they saw in that chat reminded them of one specific moment they have never truly gotten over. And with the Five of Cups showing here, this is where that memory did not come back softly. It came back with a weight. Because this is not just regret. This is the moment someone looks at what spilled, what was lost, what they cannot put back the same way, and realizes they were not as untouched as they pretended to be. They may have stopped on one message, one sentence, one little exchange that would not look important to anyone else. But to them, it opened something. Maybe it was the way you answered them when they were trying to act unbothered. Maybe it was the way you noticed something in them that they thought they had hidden. Maybe it was the way you made them feel understood without forcing them to explain every broken piece. And that is what hit, not just the words, the feeling underneath the words. They scrolled back, but emotionally, they were not scrolling through a chat. They were walking back into a version of the connection where they still felt close to you, where your energy was familiar, where your presence did something to their chest that they have not been able to replace. They told themselves they missed the conversation, but that was not the full truth. They missed how they felt when they were being seen by you. They missed the version of themselves that came forward around you. Less guarded, less performative, less cold. And that is why the Five of Cups is so uncomfortable here, because this card does not let them focus only on what they can still control. It pulls their eyes toward what they mishandled, what they minimized, what they thought they could leave behind without consequence. They may have hovered over the keyboard again. They may have typed something small, then erased it. Because the memory made them soft, but the regret made them afraid. And listen, this was not about them needing attention. This was not about them being lonely for just anybody. This was about realizing that the space you occupied in them was specific, and that realization scared them because it proved the connection was not as replaceable as they tried to believe. And with the Hanged Man showing here, this is why they froze. Not because they felt nothing. Not because they forgot. Not because your energy disappeared from their system. No. They froze because the feeling became too powerful to handle casually. The Hanged Man is not movement. It is suspension. It is someone hanging in the space between what they know and what they are afraid to admit. And that is exactly where they have been. Not fully gone, not fully present, not reaching out, but not released either. They have been sitting in the middle of their own silence, acting like stillness means control. But stillness and peace are not the same thing. And they are starting to understand that now, because if they were truly indifferent, your name would not have pulled that reaction out of them. If they were truly done, they would not have paused. If they were truly free, they would not have gone back. That is why they stopped. That is why they watched. That is why they stayed quiet. Because speaking to you means being seen by you. And there is something about the way you see them that makes their defenses feel thin. You do not just hear what they say, you hear what they are avoiding. You feel the space between their words. You notice when they are acting colder than they really are. And that scares them. Because one honest message to you would not just be a message, it would be a crack in the image. The image that they are fine, the image that they have moved on, the image that they can keep this connection locked away somewhere private and untouched. But the hanged man shows someone who cannot keep pretending from the same angle forever. Eventually, the silence starts showing them the truth upside down. They begin to see what they refused to see before. That avoiding you did not make the feeling smaller. It made the feeling louder. It made every distraction weaker. It made every replacement feel incomplete because someone else may have filled time. Someone else may have given attention. Someone else may have made the silence easier for a moment. But they could not erase what your presence still does to them. And now death showing here tells me something very important about those distractions. They were not strong enough to survive the truth because death is not always about an ending that happens all at once. Sometimes death is the slow collapse of a lie. The lie that they could replace the feeling. The lie that they could outgrow it by staying busy. The lie that if enough time passed, your name would stop meaning what it means. But it did not. They may have tried other conversations. They may have buried themselves in work. They may have posted, watched, scrolled, laughed, acted normal, kept moving. They may have surrounded themselves with noise just so they would not have to hear what was still happening inside them. But everything became a comparison. Not because those other things were meaningless, not because no one else had value, not because their life stopped completely without you. No, but because nothing reached the same place, nothing pressed on that same nerve, nothing made them feel exposed and understood at the same time. And that is the part they do not know how to explain. Because with death here, something inside them is changing whether they want it or not. The old version of them could pretend longer. The old version of them could stay cold longer. The old version of them could tell themselves that silence meant victory. But that version is starting to die. Quietly, slowly, in the background of their own mind. And that is why they opened the chat again. Because the comparison became too loud. Because every distraction only proved what it could not touch. Because every attempt to move around the feeling brought them right back to the same place. Your name, your words, that unfinished thread. They are realizing they did not simply lose contact with you. They lost access to something honest, something that made them feel real, something they could not control, but also could not fully let go of. And death does not let someone keep living inside a dead excuse forever. Eventually, something has to change. Eventually, something has to be admitted. And now, their next struggle is not whether they miss you. It is whether they can finally admit they were wrong. And with the Three of Cups showing here, this is where their pride gets even more complicated. Because on the outside, they may not look like someone falling apart. They may look social, available, distracted, fine. They may have people around them. They may have conversations happening. They may even be laughing in places where no one would ever guess your name was sitting quietly in the back of their mind. But that is the part that makes this heavier. Because sometimes people hide in noise, sometimes they hide in company, sometimes they surround themselves with other energy so they do not have to sit alone with the one energy they cannot shake. And this Three of Cups is not telling me they forgot you. It is showing me the contrast, the outside picture versus the inside truth. The face they show other people versus the message they almost sent you. Because admitting they were wrong is not simple for them. It means admitting the silence was not as powerful as they wanted it to seem. It means admitting they acted colder than they felt. It means admitting they may have made you feel replaceable when deep down they knew you were not. And that is hard for someone who has been trying to keep control. The Queen of Swords part of them wants the perfect sentence, the clean explanation. The message that sounds calm, mature, reasonable. Something that does not reveal too much. Something that does not make them look vulnerable. Something that lets them step back in without having to fully say, I cared more than I showed. But listen, no perfect message can hide that. No polished excuse can erase the fact that they opened your chat. No careful wording can cover the energy behind why they came back to your name. They are not only afraid you will reject them, they are afraid you will ask the question they have been avoiding. Why did you disappear? Why did you act like it meant nothing? Why did you choose control when honesty was right there? And that pressure is building now, quietly, behind the image, behind the social mask, behind every little attempt to look unaffected. They may not have acted yet, but their energy is no longer just watching, it is preparing. And with the Hierophant showing here, this preparation is not random. It is becoming structured. It is becoming something they are trying to understand before they let it leave their mouth. Because the Hierophant is not impulsive. The Hierophant does not rush into the room with a messy confession. This is the part of them trying to find the right way, the acceptable way, the safe way, the way that does not completely expose how much they have been holding back. They may have opened your chat and imagined what they would say. Not the dramatic version, not the full truth, not everything at once, just enough to test the doorway. Maybe a simple question, maybe a message that sounds practical, maybe something about a memory, a detail, a shared reference, something small enough to look harmless, but underneath it there is more, much more. And that is what they are rehearsing. They are not just thinking about the words, they are thinking about how you will read them. They are thinking about whether you will answer quickly, whether you will be cold, whether you will see through the message immediately and know there is something deeper hiding behind it. Because with the Hierophant, there is this need to make the feeling look proper, controlled, respectable. Like they are not breaking, like they are not circling back because your absence finally became too loud. They may have typed something, then deleted it. They may have gone to your profile, then backed out. They may have reread the last thing you said, trying to decide if there was still an opening there, still a softness, still a door. But the truth is, they are not only preparing a message, they are preparing themselves for what your response could mean. Because once they send it, the silence changes. Once they reach out, they can no longer pretend they were only watching. Once they place even one small word in that chat, their energy becomes visible. And that is why the message may come in quietly, simple, careful, almost too casual. But listen closely. If they sense something small, it will not be because the feeling is small. It will be because they are trying to hide a confession inside something safe. And now, with the Page of Cups showing here, that safe thing may look almost innocent. That is what you need to understand. It may not arrive as a full confession. It may not arrive as paragraphs. It may not arrive with them finally saying everything their silence has been holding back. Not at first. The Page of Cups is small on the surface, soft, careful, almost childlike in the way it reaches out without fully knowing what to do with the emotion behind it. So, if they send, hey, if they react to something, if they ask a question they could have asked anyone, if they bring up a memory like it just randomly crossed their mind, listen to the energy underneath it, because this is not about the size of the message. It is about why they sent it. They may disguise it as curiosity. They may disguise it as politeness. They may disguise it as something practical, something casual, something that gives them room to retreat if they feel too exposed. But underneath that little cup is a feeling they have not known how to hold, and that is why they are careful. Not because they do not care, but because they care more than the message can safely admit. Their restraint is part of the confession. Their hesitation is part of the confession. The fact that they are trying to make it look normal is part of the confession. Because what they are really testing is not the conversation. They are testing the temperature of your heart. Are you still angry? Are you still open? Are you still affected? Do you still soften when their name appears? Are they still allowed near your energy after the way they disappeared? That is what sits behind the small message, not just words. A question, a risk, a quiet emotional reach. And the Page of Cups does not come in with the confidence of someone who knows they will be received. It comes in unsure. It comes in guarded. It comes in hoping the door has not fully closed. But here is the part they may not be ready for. The real breakthrough is not going to happen just because they reach out. The real breakthrough happens when they realize you are no longer standing in the same emotional place where they left you. And with the Four of Wands showing here, this is where your energy becomes different. Because this card is not about chasing. It is not about standing outside of someone's emotional door, hoping they finally open it. It is about coming back into your own space, your own stability, your own center. And that is what they are going to feel. They may expect to find the same version of you waiting in the same emotional place. The version who would over-explain. The version who would soften too quickly. The version who would make it easy for them to come back without really naming what happened. But that is not the same energy anymore. You changed while they were silent. You changed while they were pretending. You changed while they were watching from a distance, convincing themselves they still had time. And that is what makes this so powerful. Not because you stopped caring, not because your heart became cold, not because what happened meant nothing to you. No, but because you stopped abandoning yourself just to keep the door open for someone who would not knock properly. You started rebuilding a place inside yourself where their silence did not get to control the entire room. You started remembering that your peace matters too. Your nervous system matters too. Your dignity matters too. And that is what they may not be ready to meet. Because when they reach back toward you, They are not reaching toward the past version of you. They are reaching toward someone who has been learning, someone who has been healing, someone who has been standing up emotionally, even if it hurt. And this Four of Wands feels like a threshold, a doorway, a space they once assumed they could return to whenever they were ready. But now there is a difference. They can feel that your energy is not sitting there untouched. They can feel that access to you is no longer automatic. They can feel that if they come forward, they have to come with more than curiosity, more than ego, more than a tiny message wrapped around a hidden feeling. Because you are not here to punish them, but you are also not here to rescue them from their own silence. And that is why the final message is not just whether they care. It is what you are supposed to do with the truth now that you can feel it. And with the Page of Coins showing here, this is where the message becomes grounded. Because this card is not about chasing a feeling until you lose yourself inside it. It is not about running after someone because you can sense they are finally cracking. It is not about proving that you knew all along. No. The Page of Coins asks for something real, something steady, something that can be held in the hand, not just felt in the chest. And that is what you are supposed to remember now. Their feelings may be rising. Their silence may be breaking. Their pride may be weakening, but your peace cannot depend on how fast they decide to be honest. You do not have to chase. You do not have to beg. You do not have to decode every little sign until your own nervous system becomes tired. You do not have to lower your standards just because someone is finally realizing what they should have respected earlier. Because yes, they opened your chat last night, but the real opening is happening inside them. That is the part this whole reading has been showing. The silence exposed them. The memory softened them. The pride delayed them. The truth kept pressing. And now, with this Page of Coins, there is a lesson in the middle of it. Let the action match the feeling. Let the message match the damage. Let the effort match the access they are asking for. Because you can be compassionate without making yourself available to confusion. You can understand their fear without excusing their silence. You can feel the connection without abandoning your own center. That is power, quiet power. The kind that does not need to announce itself. The kind they can feel before you even say a word. And if they come forward, you do not need to punish them. But you also do not need to pretend nothing happened. You are allowed to listen slowly. You are allowed to respond from peace, not panic. You are allowed to see whether their words have substance or whether they are only reaching because the silence finally became uncomfortable. Because what is real does not need to be forced. And what has been buried cannot stay buried forever. So stay aware, protect your peace, and understand this clearly. They opened the chat, but now the truth is opening them.